Let's begin with the foundations. The Odyssey, the Homeric epic. I am Alexei. In this context, we are examining one of the oldest and most resilient works of Western literature. A poem that has shaped how we tell stories about leaving home, suffering delays, and coming back changed. To frame our discussion, I teach and read this poem with an eye to its historical formation in oral tradition and its very modern questions about identity and justice. We observe that even after 3 millennia, it still refuses to sit quietly on the shelf.
Hi, I'm Priyanka. I'm curious about how something so old can feel, weirdly close to everyday life. Maybe that's what we can unpack today.
Let's start with the history. The Odyssey is one of two major ancient Greek epics attributed to Homer, alongside the Iliad, composed in Homeric Greek and rooted in oral performance. It follows Odysseus, king of Ithaca, over a 10-year homecoming after the 10-year Trojan War. His men die, and he alone returns to restore order at home. The poem opens in medias res. Odysseus later narrates his own wanderings to the Phaeacians, creating a layered polyphonic structure. It's important to understand two core terms. First, nostos, homecoming by sea and, by extension, the storytelling of return. The Odyssey turns this into an ethic and a narrative engine. Second, xenia, guest friendship under Zeus's protection. Good hosting and safe convoy define civilization, while violations mark savagery. The Phaeacians exemplify xenia. Polyphemus and the suitors desecrated, and divine retribution follows.
So, can we say that Xenia is like a built-in moral test? The poem keeps running. Arrival, bathing, food, then questions, gifts, and safe escort. And when someone breaks the sequence, like Polyphemus eating guests or the suitors eating Odysseus's wealth, the story flags danger.
Clearly, J.B. Hainsworth outlined that type scene pattern. The Odyssey exploits it rigorously. In simpler terms, proper hospitality keeps the world stitched together. Abuse of it tears the fabric, and Zeus Skenios eventually mends it, often violently. This brings us to the stakes of the poem, both then and now. As we continue, why does this matter now? The Odyssey remains a template for narratives of loss, wandering, and return. It topped a 2018 BBC Culture poll as literature's most enduring narrative. Its devices, omnitemporal similes, recognizable type scenes, and embedded storytelling still govern cinema and novels. Historically, the poem also models how oral traditions crystallize into canonical texts while retaining traces of performance. This duality keeps scholars honest about what we can and cannot know. Moving forward, some basic orientation. The Odyssey comprises 12,109 lines of dactylic hexameter. The metrical system supports rapid delivery and formulaic composition. Its 24-book division became standard later, likely an editorial or performance convenience rather than an original authorial choice. Named sections include the Telemachy in books 1 to 4, Odysseus's own apologoi in 9 to 12, and the Mnesterophonia, the slaughter of the suitors in book 22.
I think the journey beats are familiar to many of us. The Cyclops Polyphemus, Circe, the Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, Helios's cattle, Calypso detaining him, and finally, the Phaeacians sending him home. Back in Ithaca, there's the disguise, Euryclea's scar recognition, the bow contest, and the olive tree bed test with Penelope.
Chronologically, composition likely falls in the late 8th or 7th century BC, during or after the adoption of the Greek alphabet. Canonization by the mid-500s BC placed Homer at civic festivals such as the Panathenaea. For centuries, rhapsodes performed episodes. Alexandrian scholars, Zenodotus, Aristophanes of Byzantium, Aristarchus, later compared versions and stabilized readings. Didymus recorded that multiple city and individual editions coexisted. So we inherit a curated text shaped by both performance and scholarship. To shift gears a bit, a personal note. The shortest passage I dread and admire when teaching is Argos the dog recognizing Odysseus and dying at once. In a few lines, the poem compresses loyalty, decay, and homecoming. In a chess analogy, it is the quiet move that decides the game. Not flashy, but terminal. Next, let's explore three questions. First, the historical. Who or what is Homer, and how did this text form? Second, a counterfactual. What if Odysseus had not shouted his name to Polyphemus? Third, a live problem. Can we map the voyage, or must we read it symbolically? Priyanka, set the first one on the table.
Maybe the best place to begin is by asking a simple question. Was there a single Homer writing this? Or is Homer just, a convenient label for a long performance tradition?
It is worth noting that antiquity preferred a single poet named Homer. Modern scholarship emphasizes an oral continuum. Parry and Lord documented that oral poets compose long epics with formulaic diction. In the Homeric corpus, roughly a third of lines are repeated or formulaic. The poem's Kunstsprache blends dialects to fit the meter, suggesting performance technique rather than a solitary author's private idiom. Add to this the coexistence of variant editions and later Alexandrian stabilization, and we see why the Homeric question resists closure.
So moving on from authors to the text itself. If performances varied, how did we end up with 24 books that feel so fixed now? Was that decided by one scholar, like a final editor?
Attribution of the 24-book division is disputed. Pseudo-Plutarch credits Aristarchus, but evidence is not decisive. Segmentation likely arose from performance convenience or later editorial practice. Rhapsodes and scholars both had incentives to create manageable units. In simpler terms, think of the poem as stabilized by institutional use, festivals, schools, libraries, more than by a single editor's fiat. Homer may be a person, he is certainly a tradition. Speaking of decisions with long tails, let's transition to another aspect, a controlled what-if. Priyanka.
What if we thought about it like this? If Odysseus had not revealed his real name to Polyphemus, and Poseidon had not cursed him, would he have reached Ithaca quickly, and would the rest of the disasters evaporate?
Fundamentally, removing the boast removes Poseidon's wrath. The single greatest drag coefficient on the voyage disappears. Without that enmity, Aeolus's favorable winds might have sufficed all the way. The crew's catastrophic opening of the windbag occurs when they are nearly home, but Aeolus later refuses further help because the gods evidently oppose them. No curse, no refusal. Plausibly, no ship-destroying vengeance after Helios's cattle. Perhaps no Calypso detention. And the Phaeacians avoid their own sanction when Poseidon petrifies their return ship.
But then, if he gets home fast, the house plot changes. Do we still get the bow contest, the long disguise, and Zeus's thunder as a sign?
To elaborate, a rapid return compresses Ithaca's crisis. The suitors have less time to devour the estate. Telemachus's maturation arc shortens. Penelope's weaving stratagem may not be needed. The bow contest could still function as a recognition test, but the scale of the purge and its cosmic justification would be reduced. Zeus's unique thunder ratifies justice proportionate to the outrage. So the poem's moral architecture depends on delay. Odysseus's boast is narratively expensive, but it purchases the grand reckoning. On to our next point, the open question. Where did Odysseus actually go?
I've been wondering about this. People keep drawing maps of the wanderings, but scholars say it does not quite work. So is the geography literal or mostly symbolic?
Arguably, attempts to fix precise routes run aground on mythic topography. Scheria, the Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis as liminal monsters. Modern readings stress that the voyage externalizes inner perils, lotus eaters as oblivion, the sirens as intellectual seduction, Helios's cattle as taboo and reckless pride. Scholars like Peter Jones caution that iterative performance likely layered incompatible geographical details. Martin West traces broader Near Eastern parallels rather than port-to-port realism. In simpler terms, the map that matters is moral and psychological.
From a different angle, is there anything we can still test? Could performance studies or digital methods narrow things, or is that just wishful thinking?
We can infer several productive paths. First, study the poem's type scenes, xenia sequences, omen recognitions, testing, and anagnorisis, to see how performance shaped episode order. Second, comparative mythology can clarify structural kinships, threshold women like Circe and Siduri, without insisting on GPS. Third, textual criticism of variant lines and ancient scholia may reveal seams that correlate with different performance geographies. To some extent, new tools can sharpen the question, but the poem's design likely resists literal mapping by intent. To summarize, the Odyssey is a foundational epic of homecoming, hospitality, testing, and omens. Composed in an oral tradition, stabilized later, and endlessly reinterpreted. Today we examine three questions: who and what Homer might be, how a single boast to a Cyclops reconfigures the whole narrative if removed, and why geography gives way to symbolism. For further study, read the Iliad as a counterpoint in war camp ethics, or explore Near Eastern epics for shared narrative DNA. This then completes our present analysis. Thank you for listening. Keep your eye on Xenia, and the map will make more sense than any coastline. Until next time.
So I guess that kind of sums it up. Thank you, Professor, and thanks everyone for joining us.